Well, welcome everyone. It's so great to be doing another YouTube. And I just have to say that sometimes things that we've done for many years and then set aside come back to us again. And actually, that's what I want to talk to you about today. An old friend that's resurfaced in my consciousness and awareness that I started to use again. And I am finding the most profound benefits from it. And from all the new things I've learned over the last, I don't know, 5 or 10 years, since I first started doing this originally, it makes so much more sense. And I want to share it with you because I think it's life-changing. And I personally feel that there's a good likelihood that we're going to have some real challenges coming up this winter regarding our health. So what I'd like to do is share with you some ways that we can profoundly upregulate our ability to stay strong and healthy, to have the power of our immune system available for us, and to perhaps, if you have the money now, make an investment in a thing or two that could be profoundly beneficial for you and your family for many, many, many years to come. So I'm going to talk to you about a very powerful, very special way to do sauna therapy. And this sauna therapy includes some supplementation and some movement work. But I just want you to know that it has a profound history with moving severely toxic things out of the body. Poisons, toxins, etc. The other thing that it has many years of history for, and you can look it up as we talk about it more, and I'll get into the details in a few minutes, is the use of niacin for upregulating our mitochondria, which you know I talk about all the time, and how important that is for us. But also, it appears that niacin for many, many people has been the answer for severe depression and even bipolar disease. Niacin, for me, has been an energizer at a level I've never known before. And honestly, I believe the reason why it's working so well for me is because of all the CellCore work that I've done and talked to you about that's so profoundly beneficial in moving toxins out of the body. So the niacin has added another element to it by strengthening my mitochondria. So I don't want to get into heavy biochemistry with you, but anybody who's really looked into the biochemistry of producing ATP and getting the full benefit of energy from our mitochondria knows that NADH is part of it, and that is a niacin byproduct. When we take niacin, it can get broken down into NADH. And I know a lot of people over the last, 3 or 4 years, I guess it was all the rage about 3 years ago, was people going and getting NADH IVs and things like that for energy. I started taking a lot of NADH, experimenting with it, and I never got any benefit from it that I was aware of, like I am with niacin. So I'm going to talk to you about niacin and the things you need to be aware of, but I'm going to talk to you about a bigger protocol. Now, I am not a Scientologist, but there were some really gifted scientists who were part of Scientology. And they came up with a protocol for helping people who were addicted to heroin, to clean out heroin from their body, to clear out the emotional imbalances, and to help people who were addicted to heroin get well. And at the same time, interestingly enough, when a bunch of studies were done before and afterwards, they saw that so many toxic substances also were leaving the body. And that's kind of where I believe this all began. Perhaps it was the other way around. Perhaps the Scientology people understood that the protocol I'm going to share with you was getting rid of all kinds of chemicals and poisons and toxins from the body, and that it would be very supportive for people that were addicted to heroin to do this, because heroin is a nasty substance that you want to get out of the body, and in a way that no longer affects the brain and makes you want it. And somehow it seemed to do this, and niacin, we know, has profound effect on our emotions and brain chemistry. So it turns out that this has multiple benefits for us. And I know that many of you have heard me talk about one of my deepest concerns about what's been going on with this whole situation with some things around it, has been the whole level of fear and emotional distress and anxiety and depression that people are experiencing. All of these things have shown to be benefited way before 2019 with the use of niacin. Now, I'm not talking about niacinamide. I'm talking about niacin, vitamin B3, nicotinic acid. And this form of niacin causes a very unusual experience. It's called a flush. And if you didn't know about this flush and you took niacin, you might run to the hospital thinking something horrible was happening to you, because it creates this incredible red flushing of your skin and itching and tingling that you might think is a major allergic reaction. For some people, it might even look like hives. And this reaction will last anywhere from 5 minutes to an hour. Mine tend to be done within 10 minutes. And I've gotten so used to them that I actually look forward to them, which is kind of strange. I never did before now, but I think it's because I know that I'm going to have such an incredible clarity and mental clarity after I get done doing this. And also, many of you know that I had an open heart surgery about 6 years ago, where there wasn't enough oxygen to my brain. I guess it took a little too long to hook me up to life support, and I lost an enormous amount of brain function. And I became quite a proponent of the ketogenic diet for this sort of thing, because it made such a huge difference for me. But there's always been this subtle heaviness, mental fogginess, and whenever I was somehow challenged by perhaps something I didn't even know about, like walking outside and maybe there was some type of chemicals from chemtrails or who knows what, I could get into a very deep brain fog place. I could still function, but it sure didn't feel well. I have not had a single brain fog experience since I started taking niacin. And that is amazing. I used to tell Bernard, we have to see what my brain's like, whether we're going to do a show today or not. Because oftentimes I would have one of these fogs, that made it challenging for me to be able to speak to you clearly. And with enough speed that you might want to stay around and hear the rest of the communication. But now that's not a problem, and God willing, it will continue this way. But at this moment, I am just so grateful for the experience that I'm having. And when you have something like your whole body turning red and tingling, you know that something's happening. This is not one of those supplements that nothing happens with. The thing we do need to find is the right amount for you. So I started with 50 milligrams, and I got quite a flush with 50 milligrams. Now I'm taking 500. And in the past, when I did this protocol intensively, I was up to 2,500 milligrams. That's a lot. And it took me about 6 months to get to the point where I was taking 2,500. But I think you couldn't just get to 2,500 milligrams by just taking niacin very easily, nor would you necessarily want to. Because what we're going to do is we're going to combine taking niacin with lymphatic exercise, getting the lymph nodes moving so that we can move toxins out, because we have lymph involved with most detoxification throughout the body. And we're also going to be supporting us with having liver benefits, particularly through what we call the third phase of detoxification of the liver, or bile movement. So that we're going to support you with two things. One is coffee enemas, and the other is tudca. So for those of you that aren't willing to do coffee enemas, you can get by taking a very special form of tudca that I have. The challenge with most tudca on the market is that it comes directly from bear or other animal bile, and we can't make sure that the bacteria that they've been exposed to or poisons that they've been exposed to have been cleared out of the bile. So we have a tudca that's been 3D printed, and it's incredibly pure. One capsule takes the place of 6 tudca pills from the ancient Chinese form, which was the bear bile, and that's now still available. And by the way, used by many bodybuilders because it just supports the movement and the health of the liver so much, which is so important for all of our hormones. Most people don't think of bile movement when they think about hormones, but we need to have our bile moving so that we can conjugate our hormones well. And so it doesn't matter whether we're talking thyroid or whether we're talking testosterone or estrogen or progesterone. All of those hormones need liver to be functioning well so that they can be broken down, deionized, and used effectively in our bodies. So there's so many benefits for getting support with liver detoxification. Actually, what they've done is they've printed the exact chemical components like we do with peptides. It's considered a drug, peptides, and you typically have to get them prescribed by a medical doctor. And the peptides are extremely important in our neurological function, and many people find fantastic relief with neurological issues with pharmaceutical grade, which is 3D printed peptides, where they take an exact replica of the chemicals through a 3D printing process of the peptides. Well, we're doing the same thing with tudca. And just so you know, our liver, actually our bile, actually produces tudca as well. So this is a substance that our bodies know. It's just that many of us, because of our lifestyle or, previous issues with our parents and their toxicity and poison from the very beginning, never had a fully, properly functioning bile function. And so we didn't have enough tudca. We do have this wonderful tudca, and when we take a look at blood tests, we see quite a change in people's liver parameters when we are taking tudca and when we're not, especially for people that have fatty liver disease and things of that nature. So anyway, it's a profoundly beneficial substance, and by doing a coffee enema, we're upregulating that because we're upregulating the whole release of bile. But tudca itself is a profoundly effective support, and I know that many of you have not been willing to do enemas. It typically takes someone being ill to be willing to go that direction here in the United States. We seem to have all kinds of issues around our anuses and concern about doing something where we're actually using that pathway to nourish ourselves. But I can encourage you to go back and listen to the YouTubes that I've done on coffee enemas and the incredible benefit of them. I might not be here today if it wasn't for coffee enemas, because it was a major part of my cancer therapy that I used many, many years ago with colon cancer and still continue to make a part of my life. I find it makes an incredible difference in the quality of my energy and functioning. If you're going to do a coffee enema, and in the instructions that I provide to my patients, I have in there recommending that you take tudca and a product called kidney, liver, or KL support, and lymph active before the enema, which will help to open those pathways for you. And then while you're taking your enema, we put a couple of things into the enema, the coffee enema. One of them is these exceptional minerals called CT minerals. The other is something called hydroxygen, which is extremely high in oxygen and hydrogen. And then we, after the enema, have you take something called a binder to help move out any other toxins that may have moved into the bloodstream and pull those out through the bowel. So that's part of my coffee enema procedure. However, just doing a coffee enema, if one is strapped for money, can be very, very helpful and very inexpensive, and it's a one-time purchase to get a good quality non-toxic enema kit, which I talk about in our other YouTube. So if we're not doing coffee enemas, I would highly recommend that you take tudca. And if you can't afford that, then you just won't be getting the extra support for your liver. So there's numerous things you can do to help your liver. One of those things is to eat more greens. Another is to use dandelion tea. Another one is to use silymarin, milk thistle. You can buy milk thistle seed and grind them up and put them in capsules yourself if you want to, or you can buy a milk thistle supplement. I also have tinctures of these, which I find are really exceptional because they go into the bloodstream really quickly because you're taking them in a liquid form. So if we have digestive challenges, we're kind of bypassing that by drinking them. So those are a few things you can do to help your liver. And of course, stopping any behaviors that are harmful to the liver, like eating things that are highly chemicalized, drinking alcohol, and things of that nature. Okay? All right, but let's get back to our protocol here. So what you want to do, first off, is when we're going to be doing this, is we want to take our niacin. And I tend to chew mine because it doesn't have much of a taste. And then I just drink some water with it. You can take this with or without food. When you take it without food, you're going to have a flush typically a lot faster. So I like to do this protocol in the morning, but for some of you that may not be possible. So I'm definitely empty-stomached in the morning when I chew my niacin. Then I wait for my flush, well, actually then I go and I turn on my sauna. This is the part where you're going to have to make an investment. And I have found a relatively inexpensive sauna to be far more beneficial than the very, very expensive ones. And we have a YouTube on it. It's called the TheraSage. The YouTube that I did was their old model. They now have a new model that's got even more panels, and a really lovely seat that's made out of bamboo and a bamboo foot panel, which is a lot nicer than the original ones that they provided. And this sauna is unique in that it provides frequencies that go all the way from near through middle to far. So there's numerous frequencies of infrared light, that which is very superficial and that which goes much deeper into the tissue. And what this light does is it helps to bring toxins to the surface and sweat them out. And when you've got niacin on board, oh my goodness, does that ever help to bring toxins out more effectively. We can even see in many people who have had major exposure to toxins that when they rub their body with a towel, when they're sweating really heavily, that different colors can come out onto the towel from the toxins that the person's been exposed to. And this is a particularly important protocol to use in conjunction with protocols that you might be doing for mold exposure. So this can be very, very helpful in removing mold. And honestly, my friends, I hate to say this, but almost every house, the way they're built now, has some kind of mold that we have to deal with, especially if you've had any water damage, if you've had, leaks in a roof, if you've had, bathtubs that have leaked through the ceiling, if you have, toilets that have overflowed, all these sorts of things, bathtubs that have, clogged up. Any of this can create a mold challenge. And, we've talked about mold in other YouTubes and how we have a special spray that you can use that's made actually from a probiotic combination that tends to live on in the location where it's sprayed, eating mold as part of its life cycle. So there's that, but we also need to move this stuff out of our bodies. It's not the mold itself, but the mycotoxins that are produced by the mold that are particularly harmful to us. So this treatment that I'm talking about has so many benefits for so many health issues. We've talked about hormones, now we're talking about mold exposure. But for any exposure to any kind of chemical, and without going into great detail, because I've done this many times in the past, I just want you to know that most women put 30 to 40 toxic chemicals on their bodies every day, men too, from shampoos to skin fresheners to moisturizers to you name it. If you look at the substances that are inside these things, it's shocking. And I also want to tell you there's two things that are some of the most toxic things that we do in our homes, thinking that we're doing something good. And one of them is those air fresheners that are called plug-ins. There's really hardly anything more toxic that you can breathe that's in a home.
And a car.
And in a car, right? And then the other is the dryer sheets that people use. In my patients who are environmentally sensitive, if they're not wearing a respirator mask, one of those huge respirator masks, when they take a walk in the neighborhood where somebody is, using those dryer sheets, they can end up in the hospital. It's that toxic. So, our lives are filled with toxic chemicals that we just think are lovely for us. And the other is hand sanitizers. I mean, most hand sanitizers are filled with carcinogenic substances. So, as I've done many times, I'm going to send you to the Environmental Working Group, ewg.org, and please check out any substances that you're using on your skin, in your house for cleaning, and just get a sense of the level of toxic things that you are exposing yourself to, and seeing if you might be willing to take some of the recommendations from EWG to replace these things with things that are not harmful. So here we are taking another sideline, but it's an important one. So the other thing that's really important when we do this program, and we do this before we get in the sauna, is we want to do some type of exercise that has particular benefit for moving lymph. And many of you probably know that one of the most beneficial things you can do for moving lymph is to use a rebounder. So I have a rebounder here, and I'll show you my rebounder. It's a pretty expensive one, but I really love the ones that are made with bungee cords instead of metal. Everyone who's ever tried the two side by side really wants one that's that has these bungee cords. They're just so much more comfortable to work with. And one challenge that many people have if they're older is that they could have the loss of some urine when they're jumping on a rebounder. So what I want you to know is that you don't have to jump. And I'm going to show you in just a moment how we do this so that you don't have to jump if you have a problem with urinary retention. So, all right. So here's my little Bellicon rebounder. And people can get really athletic with these. There's whole video programs, and you can jumping jack and jump really high and do all kinds of twists and all sorts of things. But to get some lymphatic support, if you're older, this is all you need to do. Just barely lift your ankles, and you can see my body's shaking. And I just let my arms go and let this gentle movement happen. Some people who are quite infirmed will just sit on a chair and then just put their feet on it and just move their bottom of their foot up and down, leaving their toes on the rebounder, and they're able to get some lymphatic support that way. So this is one thing that you can do. And it's nice to actually do whatever you're doing, be it real active or, whatever you're doing on here, until you actually feel like you're winded a little bit, that you get a real exercise. And then I want to show you another way to get the support that you might need for lymphatic support. So this is my power plate. There's numerous kinds. This one does quite a bit, but I'm going to turn it on, and then I can just increase how fast it's jiggling, and it's less than 30, where you can hear my voice is jiggling too. So this way you can also really get your lymph moving. You can see I'm shaking. You can do all kinds of exercises on here. A lot of people will do their workout on these so that they're getting lymphatic support. But also, I find if you have some area where you're experiencing pain, you can actually have this shaking going on while you're in a position, like holding a yoga position or a position that brings a little bit of strain to an area, and it seems to open it up for you. It's really great to get a PT to help you figure out what things you might want to do on here, but you're getting incredible lymphatic support while you do any exercise that you might be choosing to do on here, to open things up, to support you with whatever movement you might want. So anyway, they're quite fun, and they really support the lymphatic system. So if you don't have money that you can use for buying equipment, you can just do what they did in the heroin program, which was do full-out running and run until exhaustion, and then come back and sit in the sauna when you were totally, after you've given yourself as much of a run as you could. And people were finding that day by day they were able to run further and further to get to the point of exhaustion. So they've got the niacin on board, they're flushing, they're running, and then they come to the sauna. And then the sauna can really help them with moving out more toxins. And if you have a little bit more money, typically I think, well, the new sauna, I think by the time is about $1,200 by the time we get done with shipping. And then there's a small piece, it's an ozonator. And once you start sweating, you can turn on the ozonator, and because our particular type of sauna has your head so that you won't be breathing in the ozone. We have a nice collar that protects you from whatever's coming out also, you can actually get ozonated at the same time. So you're getting all of these incredible multiple detoxing effects. What's recommended after we do this is to jump in the shower and wash yourself off well. And there's one piece that we could add. It's not absolutely essential, but it is another piece if you want to get the full benefit without having to spend any more money, which is to do some skin brushing, some very gentle skin brushing before you get into the sauna. And I believe we have a YouTube also that demonstrates skin brushing for you. And the one thing I want to remind you regarding skin brushing is that we are never actually really scratching hard on the skin. We're doing this very superficially. A quick reminder from the YouTube that I did on the lymphatic system is that the lymph is right on the surface. It's not deep. If you were to push in, you're going to be getting muscles and things, so you can have a nice massage by pushing in on tissue. But with lymph work, you almost imagine that your fingers have sticky tape on them, and you use the least amount of pressure you can to see the skin move. So when we're doing our brushing, we're doing it extremely gently. We're not putting pressure on. We're not, cutting the skin in any way. We're being extremely gentle with the brushing, because what we want to do is just move the lymph in the direction that it goes, which is from the head, the top of the head, down to the top of your collarbone, and from the rest of the body up to the collarbone. The arms to the collarbone. Fingers all the way up the arm to the collarbone. Toes all the way up the leg and across the abdomen up to the collarbone. But I really encourage you to go back and look at that YouTube to get the information on how we do a proper skin brushing. So basically here are the steps. We start out by, if we're going to do an enema, making our enema solution. And while we're waiting for, or finishing off the enema solution, making it, we'll go ahead and take our niacin. Then we go and we do our jumping or running, which is, if you don't have any money for equipment, you can run. You can jump in place, you can do jumping jacks, you can use a jump rope, you can do anything that'll really get you winded. Then I would highly recommend at that point that you do your enema and then jump into the sauna. Or if it's easier for you, you can do your sauna and after the sauna do the enema, which will be another whole level of moving toxins out of the body for you, whichever works better for you. So anyway, that is the process. And by doing this, we're upregulating our mitochondria, which means our energy. We're moving poisons and toxins out of the body. We're supporting the biggest organ of detoxification in our body, which is our skin. And we're also, if we're including the coffee enema or the tudca, we're definitely supporting liver detoxification at the same time. So you're getting so much done. And it can help to move depression, make you stronger, healthier, happier. It just has so many amazing benefits. And I just felt I had to share this with you all because I'm receiving so much benefit by doing this right now. And it's worth every minute that it takes me to do it. Some people may find that they get energized from niacin. And if they do find this, then taking it before sleep is not the best idea. But I find that for many of us, we have a circadian rhythm that tends to make us a little bit more drowsy at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. That's when we tend to be really alkaline, and most people don't realize that an alkaline state is more of a deeply relaxed, slowing down state. And so I find that taking it in the afternoon is also wonderful, and you don't have to go do this whole process again. If you were to do this 3 to 5 days a week, it could be amazing. But I would encourage you that if you find that you're getting great benefit as far as your state of mind goes emotionally, or any other way, be it energy or whatnot, try just taking the niacin on the days that you're not doing the full procedure and seeing if you're still getting benefit from it. And if you are, I would recommend that you do that. I am able to source for you real niacin. This doesn't work if you take a non-flush form of niacin, and they don't necessarily say non-flush on the bottles. You have to read them really well, and the form that we're looking for is nicotinic acid. So, you know, I can help you with getting the right stuff, or you can do your best to source nicotinic acid on your own.
Right.
So, and you aren't necessarily flushing if you're not experiencing the effect. And what we're doing is we're increasing the circulation. And one of the things they taught us in, you know, school for being a naturopath is that one of the ways we know if somebody's healthy or not is if they're having really good circulation. Because wherever you don't have circulation, you don't have the uptake of the nutrients and enzymes and all the things that we need to be healthy. So we need to actually move the substances through the tissues, through the body, through the membranes, through the cells, and we can sure see it's happening when we're experiencing niacin.
Do people ever get to a point where they don't experience a flush?
The recommendation is to keep taking more till you do.
Till you do. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
And
So-
the longer you do, the better when you take it?
You mean the longer the flush?
Yes.
That I'm not sure about.
Okay.
I don't think that's necessary. I think we just need to get red.
It lasts about 30 minutes for me.
For you,
Yeah.
yours lasts a lot longer than mine. Yeah.
So I don't know if that means something.
I think it just means you're getting a really good flush bird. I like that idea a lot.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. And you know, just so you know, many people just don't sweat. And that is not a good thing. It may be convenient to not sweat because your clothes aren't going to get smelly or whatever. But all that's indicating is that your detoxification channels are not open, and you want to figure out a way to sweat somehow, some way. And it's very common when people have autoimmune disease that they don't sweat. It's very common when people are seriously poisoned that they don't sweat. But there's some things you can do to help you sweat, and one of them is salt rubs. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but you can use like a kosher salt, an inexpensive salt, and just rub your skin with it. That can make you feel quite itchy too, by the way. You can take, you know, first of all, wet yourself down, and then massage yourself with salt. And that tends to help people that don't sweat begin to start sweating in a sauna. The sauna, if you don't sweat, is a really important form of investment for you, for your health. You definitely want to be able to sweat. It's extremely important for our detoxification. I had wonderful good fortune recently to be able to talk to Dr. Russel Reiter. And I, in an earlier YouTube, mentioned his amazing research for the last 50 years on melatonin, and such a different point of view than I had ever heard before, which is the incredible benefit of high-dose melatonin. And as I researched this more and more, I kept finding that different doctors were giving very different amounts of melatonin to take. And so I spent an hour or so trying to get a hold of Dr. Reiter, calling the UT system, and eventually I found myself with his phone number, and I called, and I thought for sure I would be talking with a secretary or someone like that. To my great surprise, Dr. Reiter picked up the phone. He said, "Oh, how perfect. I have 5 minutes. Somebody is late for a call. What did you want to ask me?" And I said, "I'm so confused because the different people that I've heard speak about melatonin have all used different amounts that they're recommending." And I said, "How much do you recommend?" And he said, "Well, for somebody who doesn't have cancer, I would recommend that they take 1 milligram per kilogram of body weight." And I said, "Dr. Reiter, that's only, like, it's less than 60 milligrams for me." And Dr. Schauenberger, who I talked about in my last video, mentioned that people should take 180 milligrams. And he said, "It won't hurt you to take 180 milligrams. It doesn't hurt people at all. But it's a waste of money." And he said, as we get older, we need more melatonin. So, if you're 30 years old and, you want to take melatonin, you would look at it based on 1 milligram of melatonin per kilogram.
Per day?
Per day at night before you go to bed. But, if you're like me, almost 70, it wouldn't be a bad idea to take an extra 10, 20, 30 milligrams. So I'm just going ahead and I'm taking a 60 milligram capsule myself before I go to bed every night. And then there's the interesting research regarding cancer and their work with animal studies. And all of these, by the way, are in fully acknowledged medical studies that have been actually accepted by the powers that be into the medical journals. And what they've shown is that as long as you can keep somebody in the dark or with melatonin still in their bloodstream, people rarely will ever metastasize. Even people with 4th stage cancer. And there is a recommendation for those with 4th stage cancer, in other words, people who have metastatic cancer, to take these high doses of melatonin. And I'm finding that it seems to be making this kind of a difference for my friends that I'm working with as they're supporting their bodies healing themselves by taking these higher doses of melatonin because they're not appearing to metastasize, which is one of the major causes of death when people have cancer, is this metastasis of the tumors all over the place.
Are you taking it during daylight hours? Then?
Yes, you're taking it all day long. So
in doses?
Every 4 hours or so, you're taking, I would say, a 60 milligram dose. So 4 times a day, you're taking a 60 milligram dose. And before you go to bed, you could take 100 milligrams and really make sure that you're covered. The other thing that's quite interesting is the research regarding how beneficial melatonin is for mitochondria. Again, we come back to our dear friend mitochondria. But mitochondria basically live on melatonin. So keeping that melatonin in our bodies helps to increase our energy production through melatonin. It also appears to be the most powerful antioxidant there is, reducing inflammation. It seems to be very preventative with any kind of neurological disease, from Parkinson's to Alzheimer's disease, and extremely beneficial in preventing glaucoma, all of these are major diseases that people suffer from, especially in the later years of their life. And so Dr. Ritter himself is in his late 80s. He takes melatonin every day, and he has for like 30 years. And it's just amazing to hear him speak and to see him move. He is just, a very active, very present, brilliant man, continuing to travel around the world and teach at this age, at this advanced age. And he feels that this could never be possible without his continuous use of melatonin. For him, just a little bit over 1 milligram per kilogram of body weight in his melatonin consumption. And he does explain that it's important that it's a really pure form of melatonin so that it's working properly. So we're carrying that again in our pharmacy. So those are some things that we wanted to make sure that you know. It's a very inexpensive way to provide to us probably one of the most powerful things we can do for anti-aging and health benefits. And he's also shown many studies showing how beneficial it is to use melatonin for people who have experienced COVID, and how it has stopped experience in its shoes, and also for prevention. So without having much time to talk to him about the details, those are the things that he shared with me. And I'm very, very heartened by it. And you can go online and actually look up the medical studies that he's done over the last 50 years, indicating how this all works in great depth. So we're talking about two things today. We're talking about the niacin protocol that involves our use of niacin and exercise and sweating, ideally with a sauna that provides us with all these different levels of infrared, and then also the incredible beneficial use of melatonin. So please feel free to text us if you have any questions. My phone number is 512-698-7009. Much better to text me than to email me. And if you do want to email, just text me and tell me that you emailed, and then I'll look you up, because I get so many emails, I oftentimes have not been able to get back to you all. Because I miss them, I don't see them.
And you have the products?
I do. I have all the products. I have quite an extensive pharmacy. I've been studying and creating pharmacy for over 50 years now, and I still want to always remind you that we can have incredible benefits by working energetically with homeopathic remedies. It's just amazing. I recently studied 5 different courses of different doctors from around the world, and how they've been very effectively treating the symptoms as well as the damage with homeopathic remedies. Okay, so thank you once again for sharing some time with me. And please know that it would be a privilege, beyond privilege, to work with you and your loved ones. So many blessings to you, and thank you for all your years of support and information.